Welcome to Waukesha County GovCast, your source for what's happening in our vibrant community. I'm your host, Hillary Mintz, Public Information Officer.
And I'm Sean Lundy, Chief of Staff for Waukesha County Executive Paul Farrow.
Each episode, we dive into the latest news, community projects, and the initiatives shaping Waukesha County, where innovation meets public service. From in-depth discussions on local governance to county services, we're here to keep you informed and connected. So whether you're a resident, a business owner, or just curious about local government, join us for a closer look at the heart of your county. Well, welcome to GovCast. Today is Wednesday, September 24th. We have a special episode for you today. I'm Hillary Mintz here with Sean Lundy.
Hey, Hillary.
Hey, Sean. Well, last night, County Executive Paul Farrow introduced the $389 million 2026 county budget. And County Executive Farrow joining us today. Paul, welcome back to GovCast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
All right, Paul, how many budgets have you introduced?
This is my 10th budget that I've put out.
So you have decades worth of experience on introducing county budgets, and you meet with every department each summer, and this year you held a series of public budget open house sessions to get public input on the budget. We were in Brookfield, Muskego, Delafield. You also met with business leaders to seek their input. You've done all the homework. You introduced the budget, and after all of that, we're going to simplify this all down to just 2 to 3 words. So, Paul, how did you balance this budget in just a couple of words?
Best way to describe it is cuts and luck.
We should note that the budget you introduced is balanced. So how do we do that when budgets are so financially tight?
The challenge is, Hillary, when we're looking at the budget, we have 16 departments that we work with. From the Sheriff's Department to Parks and Land Use to Public Works to our courts, they all have needs. And we have to figure out how to balance that out. And what happened in this budget is we actually took some money from some departments, and we'll talk about it a little later, to say, you guys are doing really well in some areas, but we need to put this over in this because this is a priority for the public. And I think that's the one thing we always kind of fall back on is we do priority-based budgeting. We talk to the public. We say, what is it that you really find important for the county to provide? And how do we provide those services?
And so I know we do this year over year. This year, we sought that input in the form of those budget open house sessions that were kind of held in different places around the county. And you said we took money from some areas and put it into the number one priority, which is justice and public safety. So the Sheriff's Department, I know, received a lot of new levy, emergency preparedness, DA, medical examiner, that sort of stuff. But what did you cut, I guess, is really the question. So if that money, because we don't have a lot of new money because of state levy limits, where did that money come from? What are the service reductions that the public should be aware of that if the county board passes the budget as is, these cuts would go into place? What are they?
When you see what happens, you're going to see some of our transit routes, some of the bus routes that we have provided, we're going to be cutting. Again, it comes down to usage more than anything else. Some of our meal service programs, there's going to be an area that we're cutting in the meal service out in Oconomowoc. Again, look at the usage versus the costs involved. Other areas that we're looking at, we've got a decrease in employees in a number of departments from Health and Human Services, Public Works, our Parks and Land Use. We really are just looking at ways that we could decrease by not impacting the high need or the high recommended service areas.
Yeah, so it's low impact cuts, as low as possible. So when we look at like the Oconomowoc Senior Meal Site, for example, and we've received some public input on those or on that specific change, there's also a change at the meal site offered at La Casa in the city of Waukesha. But when we looked at the data, which is how we have to make these decisions in a priority-based environment, only 6 or 7 people are using the Oconomowoc Senior Meal Site. So where are those people going? Are we telling them you're out of options and the program's gone, or what is the real impact on the individuals who were utilizing that service?
No, we're still going to be providing the services. What we're asking individuals, like those, that 6 to 7 as a daily average, we're asking those individuals to unfortunately have to drive into Sussex if they want to have lunch. We still provide the services where we deliver at home. One of the situations that occurred with this is as we're reducing our costs, we had an individual out there who was the kind of the site manager, was leaving to go to a new position in a new area. And that gave us the opportunity to say, okay, we don't need to fund this in the next year. And so those are the things that we're looking at. When we look at La Casa, we have a number of areas in the area still that they can get to that we can provide those services for.
So my first question to you was, again, how would you sum up this budget? And you said cuts and luck. You just talked about the cuts in service reductions, the senior meal sites. But how did we get positive. How do we get lucky this year?
Well, we didn't win the lottery. We were trying.
Rats.
But one of the things that happened, so in the sheriff's department, the sheriff had a gap of about $400,000. And what was going on was the FCC decided on a ruling last year.
That's the Federal Communications Commission for everyone, playing at home.
Yes. The FCC was basically saying we couldn't charge for phone services in our jail. So currently, when an inmate's receiving a phone call, we can charge for that. The current administration put that on hold. So the deficit that we thought we were going to have, we don't have at the moment, could come back at any given time. So we have to anticipate that, and we're kind of watching that as we work through. But fortunately for us right now, the sheriff was able to maintain those funds at this period in time.
I just think that that issue really highlights how tight these budgets are, because imagine if you have a balanced budget now that you got lucky here, and in this particular circumstance, we were able to retain the $400,000 in revenue. If that $400,000 would have gone away, if the current Trump administration had not kind of put that FCC rule on hold for a second, then we would be finding $400,000 in additional cuts just to make the sheriff's budget work. Now, that might be 3 patrol people with salaries and benefits and all the other costs associated with it. So it is really indicative, or this issue is really indicative of how tight the budget is and how much, when you're looking at the state of Wisconsin and they're sitting on billions of dollars in their rainy day fund, in a budget surplus, and we are talking about, tenths and hundredths of a percentage of what they have left over in the change in the couch, making a huge difference in our budget. And that's really, our budgets are tight, and this is a perfect example of how tight it is and how when we say we got a little lucky here, this is what we're talking about.
Yeah, when you talk about the state budget, one of the impacts that we saw this year was they provided some funding to our court systems. And we've talked about this in the past. Our court system is unique. The way I look at it, it serves 2 masters. The judges are state employees. The support staff are county employees. Right now, the breakup is about 80% of funding comes from the counties, 20% comes from the state. We were working with the state legislature in this last budget to try to get to a 50-50, which would have provided about $70 million to all the counties across the state. The legislature came back in its infinite wisdom and said, you guys can do it with $10 million. That's going to give us about 2 years worth of cushion in our courts. So we don't have to provide the levy into the courts this year or next year. But after that, it's going to be a challenge. Kind of the same thing as we talked about in 2023 when they made the historic change on shared revenue. They said this is going to change everything and be the dynamics for years to come, provided about 2 years worth of help to us. So those are some of the challenges that we face as we look at what the state's going through and what they're doing. Well, we'll continue to try to champion to get more money for the state mandated programs. When you think about it, our levy this year is about $117 million. So that's the property tax levy the county is going to be collecting. Of that, about $51 million goes to these mandated programs the state requires us to do, but doesn't give us the money to do them.
So you mentioned the delay in the FCC ruling, providing a little bit of luck, but we also have some opioid settlement money we're using.
Yeah. So as you know, the last couple of years, there have been a number of lawsuits on the opioid settlements and the opioid use. What we're seeing is different payouts, but it averages out to about 15 years we're going to have of funding. So what we're trying to do is feather that money in. We put monies into our district attorney's office. We put it into our medical examiner, health and human services to offset some of the levy needs. And that, again, helps us extend a little bit more what we're doing without making the cuts.
Yeah, and that money is limited, so we can't just say, oh, we'd like to use that for parks, for example, which, of course, we would not do. But the settlement itself, it's a nationwide kind of class action lawsuit that was filed against the pharmaceutical companies. And that money comes in on a yearly basis or in big lump sums, and we are very limited. It is prescribed in the lawsuit or, in the court's ruling of what that money can be used for. So we can't just use it where we want to use it. So we apply it to certain areas, and then we're able to say, because that money is coming in for so long, it's almost like it's property tax revenue. It's a guaranteed source of income. So we're able to use it in a way that we would use tax money. So that's how it helps the DA, for example, in their victim witness division. We're able to put some of that opioid settlement money in that specific division and really help the people that are impacted by the opioid crisis. And so that's another way that we got lucky, right? We've got that FCC ruling. We've got a little sprinkling of courts money that helps us for a year or two. And then we have this opioid money that in a normal year we wouldn't have, but for the foreseeable future we will. And so, that's how we make the budget go.
Yeah, and it's a challenge, and it's the balancing act that we go through. What programs can we use opioid funds for that, as you said, are prescribed by the lawsuits? And then how can we pull some of the levy back without impacting that department too heavily?
So we have a balanced budget. We found some cuts. We got a little lucky. What can the taxpayer expect on their property tax bill? What is the tax rate? Should people expect their county portion? Now, let me just take a quick sidebar here. The tax bill, you got to read it, which is, tons of fun, obviously. But you've got several line items that you get on your tax bill. You open this thing up in December and you see that you have a portion of that bill goes to your community, your city, your town, your village. A large portion of that goes to the school district that you are affiliated with. There's some cash in there for Waukesha County Technical College. And then usually the lowest amount on your bill, other than maybe like some state lottery, something or other, will be the county portion of that bill. And so we have a tax rate that's like a small town in northern Wisconsin. We have very low taxes. So just that county portion of the tax bill, what would that look like for an average homeowner? Up, down, the same? Where are we at?
Assuming the budget passes.
Assuming the budget passes, as is, it should be just about the exact same. So what happens is the tax rate is actually going to go down by 8 cents per $1,000 of value. So it goes from, I believe it's about $1.35 to $1.27. When you think about it, of the 72 counties, that is the lowest county without a sales tax when you look at the tax rate. So it should stay just about the same. It might go down a little bit depending on different municipalities where you're at, but you're not going to see an increase across the board for the county operations.
Yeah. Well, this is Paul Farrow being Paul Farrow. He does not have the chart in front of him that I have. We did actually go from $1.35 per $1,000 of value last year to $1.27. Back in 2015, when you started, it was $2.08. So we've had a pretty significant decrease, and that is a decrease per $1,000 of value of your home. Your home value has been going up over the years. That forces that tax rate down, and we basically collect the same amount of money year over year, and that's kind of how the math works.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, the budget is now in the hands of the county board, and they're going to be holding a series of committee meetings, and then they're going to vote on it in mid-November. So we're hoping that all goes well, and we can't thank you enough for joining us again here on GovCast, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.